Hi, friend. This week we're looking at John chapter 11. There's this great story about Lazarus, and many Christians know this story. It's a friend of Jesus's dies, and Jesus raises him from the dead. It's an amazing story, but there's a part of it that we often don't hear and we don't notice, and maybe when we do, we don't like it. It says in John 11 at verse 14, Lazarus has died, and for your sake I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. I am the resurrection and the life. Now, he says this, and you have to listen very carefully. I'm glad he died while I wasn't there. In fact, Jesus delays his arrival on purpose, and that feels really uncomfortable. Why would he not come and heal Lazarus? You may not know this, but Lazarus is the brother of Mary and Martha, also two very popular figures from the Bible that are in another story with Jesus. That's kind of a big deal. And so the reality is that there's this family that knows Jesus, that Jesus clearly loves them, and he seemingly lets one of them die. Well, the reason he does that is because he has a greater purpose. He has something very profound to do with Lazarus, with his death. And so Jesus is allowing what we would perceive as suffering to occur, which is hard for us to hear, but we need to understand that God does allow suffering. It's something we struggle with and we struggle to understand, but it is not an indictment on God's character that he allows suffering, because he has a purpose, he has a plan, he has a reason for it. Now, in this particular story, he has a reason that is important. It's a purpose that is very important. He needs to show something deeper, something very important about his nature and the glory of God. And so he waits. In fact, the faith that trusts Jesus, and even when we don't understand, is the kind of faith we're trying to develop. A faith that allows for bad things to happen. It's not so much how we live, how great our life is. It's often how well we live considering what we're going through, that we worship God even when it's hard. We worship God even when it's difficult. Martha comes out. Martha is the one who famously in the Bible was busy working at an event and was upset because her sister Mary was enjoying Jesus's presence too much. And so Martha, kind of this working, no nonsense figure, now comes back with a very strong statement of faith. If you had been here, my brother would not have died. She knew that Jesus had the power to heal her brother. She was confident in his ability, maybe more so than others. But even now, whatever you ask, God will give it. She doesn't come out and say it, but she's even saying in this moment, you could bring him back to life. I know you can do this thing. And that's quite remarkable. So Martha, the one that's criticized in one story for being too matter of fact, too worried about the details, is now one who is very matter of fact about her trust, her faith. She's believing Jesus when maybe nobody else would. So not an accusation to her friend who showed up late to save her brother, but rather a statement of his ability. And to this, Jesus responds, I am the resurrection and life. And this is upping the stakes. Okay. It's one thing to be a healer. It's one thing to be a miracle man. Now what we're seeing is he's not a miracle man. He is the miracle man. Jesus is able to do something that it's unrealistic to expect. He can do things that are amazing. And so the question is here for us is, will we trust him not only when he acts, but when he waits? And have we ever experienced that in our lives where we're waiting for Jesus to act? This is the kind of faith that Martha is displaying here. And then also in this scene, we get this important lesson as well. Not only is Jesus the miracle worker, but he's not distant from our suffering. So now Mary comes out into the scene, and Mary is we would say, the more emotional, the more high strung of the two sisters, the one more likely to show her emotions, her feelings, and she lets it all hang out, and she's upset and she weeps, and we get this amazing response from Jesus. It's the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. He goes right there with her. He's not embarrassed by her sadness, nor is he willing to ignore her sadness. Even more so, he's willing to participate in her sadness for Lazarus's death, even though he knows he's about to do something quite remarkable. That's something to think about. Why would Jesus weep when he knows he's about to create such great joy? It's because Jesus gets us. He understands us. He knows where we're coming from. He knows our feelings himself. He knows that our pain is real, and he feels the pain as well because he's fully human in this moment. And Jesus weeps with her. And so what we learn from this is that Jesus is not an unfeeling miracle man. He's not an unfeeling prophet. He's not an unfeeling God incarnate on earth. He feels pain with us. He's a compassionate Savior, we would say, at this point. Now, God's glory often comes through what we would never choose, right? So we would not choose the hardships in our life. We wouldn't choose the broken relationships we have. We wouldn't choose our failures that we go through. But it's often in those places that we come nearer to God, that we come nearer to Jesus, that we see some flashpoint of understanding about ourselves and about the nature of God. It's when we grow the most. And so we wouldn't choose it, but maybe we should never want to let it go. My last experience of drinking was very unpleasant for me. It was a high-speed car chase that ended with me in the hospital. Wouldn't choose that for any of you, but I wouldn't let it go because out of that I've learned so much about my nature and about God's nature. And so we wouldn't choose for Lazarus to die, but if he doesn't die, he can't be brought back from the death. God acts in this situation. And this is important to understand. The reason why Jesus made sure it was 4 days is because Jewish tradition believed that the spirit left the body after 3 days. And so a resurrection couldn't occur unless somebody was God. And so Jesus does on the 4th day rise Lazarus from the dead. He says, come out. And Lazarus comes out wrapped in his grave clothes, almost like a mummy, we would think. Must have been somewhat terrifying, somewhat remarkable. The dead man walks. He's not just dead, he's very dead. He's 4 days dead. Why? Why does Jesus do this? So more people will believe, so that the miracle will be perceived as more powerful, so that they will understand the simple question, do we trust Jesus? Do we trust him when he acts? And do we trust him when he waits? And friend, I hope you can learn from this story this week, and I hope to see you around. God bless you.